quickly Luke 10:38-42, just a short passage here, which we have heard fairly recently. So, as Jesus and the disciples continued on their way to Jerusalem, they came to a certain village where a woman named Martha welcomed him into her home. Her sister Mary sat at the Lord's feet listening to what he taught, but Martha was distracted by the big dinner that she was preparing. She came to Jesus and said, "Lord, doesn't it seem unfair to you that my sister just sits here while I do all the work? Tell her to come and help me." But the Lord said to her, "My dear Martha, you are worried and upset over all these details. There is only one thing worth being concerned about. Mary has discovered it, and it will not be taken away from her." So it is worth mentioning, obviously, the sort of standout thing that's often picked up in the story about how, Mary's taking the better choice. She's the one that's fixing her eyes on Jesus and really focusing on him while he's there. And I think that's something definitely important and something that Martha needs to learn. But I want to try and pick out some of the more positive characteristics of Martha that sometimes get put to the side. The first one of these, I think, is her hospitality. It's Martha welcomed him into her home. Hospitality was such an important thing then. It really was part of the culture, and I think it is important to us now as well. She welcomes him into her home, and it's not the only time that we hear in the Gospels that Martha welcomed him in and served him. We hear it again in the story where Mary pours the nard over. Martha is serving. So we've got, she welcomes him in, she serves him, she provides the meal, she does what needs to be done for him. And I think it's a reminder to us, there are so many people around us, our church is big, our church is growing. Hospitality is a way that we can bring people in. We meet people on a Sunday, and just then inviting them to our homes really can help them feel part of the community. And I think Martha is a really good example. She welcomed Jesus in. How can we welcome Jesus into our homes? By welcoming others. And that's Christians, that's for fellowship. Having those smaller conversations in our homes is a really wonderful way to build the faith amongst us. And also welcoming in non-Christians, let them see our home as a place that is for them as well, and to see Jesus in our homes, I think, is a really amazing one. So first one is her hospitality, I think, is amazing. The second thing I really love about her, which is a little bit in here and then I'm going to read the next story, is that she really speaks her mind. And I think that's something that we could be doing more sometimes with Jesus. She says in there, "Lord, doesn't it seem unfair to you that my sister just sits here while I'll do all the work?" She complains to him, she says exactly what she feels. And I'm just now going to sort of jump to the next story, because there's a couple more examples in there that I really like of her speaking her mind and a few other things about her. So the second one is John 11. We come up with Martha again. So a bit of context, and then I'll pick up on verse 20. Lazarus is sick, so Lazarus is Mary and Martha's brother, and so the sisters send word to Jesus. He takes a bit too long to get there, and Lazarus is already dead. And then we're picking it up when Jesus does actually get there. So from verse 20, it says, "When Martha got word that Jesus was coming, she went to meet him, but Mary stayed in the house. Martha said to Jesus, 'Lord, if only you had been here, my brother would not have died. But even now, I know that God will give you whatever you ask.' Jesus told her, 'Your brother will rise again.' 'Yes,' Martha said, 'he will rise when everyone else rises at the last day.' Jesus told her, 'I am the resurrection and the life. Anyone who believes in me will live, even after dying. Everyone who lives in me and believes in me will never die. Do you believe this, Martha?' 'Yes, Lord,' she told him. 'I have always believed you are the Messiah, the Son of God, the one who has come into the world.' Then she returned to Mary." So a little bit happens. Mary goes out to see Jesus. There are lots of other people there. And then from verse 33, we think on a little bit more, and we can see the character of Jesus coming out here. "So when Jesus saw her weeping and saw the other people wailing with her, a deep anger welled up within him, and he was deeply troubled. 'Where have you put him?' he asked. They told him, 'Lord, come and see.' Then Jesus wept. The people who were standing nearby said, 'See how much he loved him.' But some said, 'This man healed a blind man. Couldn't he have kept Lazarus from dying?' Jesus was still angry when he arrived at the tomb, a cave with a stone rolled across its entrance. 'Roll the stone aside,' Jesus told them. But Martha, the dead man's sister, protested, "Lord, he's been dead for 4 days. The smell will be terrible." Jesus responded, "Didn't I tell you that you would see God's glory if you believe?" So they rolled the stone aside. Then Jesus looked up to heaven and said, "Father, thank you for hearing me. You always hear me. But I said it out loud for the sake of all these people standing here, so they will believe you sent me." Then Jesus shouted, "Lazarus, come out!" And the dead man came out, his hands and feet bound in grave clothes, his face wrapped in a headcloth. Jesus told them, "Unwrap him and let him go." So there's obviously quite a lot in that one. But first of all, a couple more places where she speaks her mind. You know, when Jesus first arrived, she says, "Lord, if you'd been here, you wouldn't have died." You know, sometimes God doesn't do things in the way that we want him to. And it's okay to be frustrated. It's okay to say that to God. Like, he knows what we're thinking. It's okay to say those things to him. My personal favourite is, "Lord, he's been dead for 4 days. The smell will be terrible." You know, to say, "It's going to be really stinky. Like, what are you doing? That's ridiculous." And I think Martha's such a good example to us that Jesus lived on earth. Jesus was a person. You can talk to him like a friend. You don't have to have a prayer with beautiful flowery words that you've thought about before you say it to God. Tell him what you're thinking, because he knows, he feels, he understands. So just be bold. You know, tell him if you think it's going to stink when he opens the door. You know, tell him that if you'd have done this, why didn't you? Like, it doesn't make sense to me. And yeah, he will really listen to that. And then this second story of Martha, I think we can see that she is such an incredible woman of faith. Like, she answers yes to Jesus every time he asks, "Do you believe this? Do you know this?" "Yes, Lord. Yes, I do." You know, she has had, her brother has just died. This is a really difficult time for her. And yet she still believes and declares the power of God. You know, she's like, "But even now I know that God will give you whatever you ask. I have always believed you are the Messiah, the Son of God, the one who's come into the world from God. Like, I have always believed this. Yes, you should have been here, and then my brother would have died. But I still believe. I know that you're powerful, and I still believe that in my heart of hearts." I think that is a real challenge to us. You know, when things aren't necessarily going exactly our way, do we believe in the same way? Can we honestly say, "I have always believed"? You know, when things are tough, I think she is such a good example of, yes, her life was hard at that moment. You know, she was right in the depths of grief. It's 4 days since her brother died, and yet she still really believed in that. And so those are my little things about Martha. A couple of things I think we can really pull out about Jesus from this story is that, you know, she believed he was powerful, and yes, he is powerful. He then went on to raise Lazarus from the dead. I think that's the best example that you can give. You know, she believed it, and he did it. You know, and he says, like, "I am the resurrection, the life. Anyone that believes in me will live." Like, he is powerful. Whoops. Don't want to drop that. He is powerful, and he demonstrates that to her, and I think that's a really amazing reminder. And the last thing I just want to pick out is that Jesus really cares. You can see it actually in both of these stories. So in the first one, he actually says, "My dear Martha, you're worried and upset over all the details." He wasn't telling her off what she was doing and saying that her sister should have helped. She was like, "No, my dear Martha, you're worried and upset. Like, don't worry. Don't be upset about these things. You're still my dear Martha." He's not angry with her, but he's correcting her so that she does the right thing, but in a gentle way. He understands she doesn't have to be perfect. And there can often be this, especially with things like hospitality, that feel like everything has to be perfectly clean and tidy and the food amazing, but you don't have to be perfect to do these things. And then in the second story, like, when Jesus saw the weeping, he wept too. You know, it says there that the others are noticing, surely he must have loved Lazarus. Yes, Lazarus was his friend, and he is upset that Lazarus is dead. You know, he feels our pain. He lost people when he was on earth. Like, he had those human emotions. He felt the grief. And I think we can really see in this story that, you know, Jesus wept with them. Jesus understood. He sympathized. He can come and meet, you know, he came to Martha and Sister Mary when they were in that darkest point where they lost someone, and yet he showed that he cared. He doesn't just sort of comfort from the outside, but he got in there with them, he wept with them. And I think that's a really good reminder to us that, Jesus, he was angry about the death. It angered him. Like, he doesn't like to see these bad things happen. It's not, oh, well, you should have done that and then it would have been fine. It angers him to see the hurt and the pain, and that he really does care with us. So he's powerful, and yet he still cares about each individual one. And I think you really see that in those little stories. There we go.